Hello there. In this week's video, I'm going to be talking about how to prepare for a job interview. During this video, I'm going to be giving you a few tips and tricks to make sure that by the time you finish that interview, you are at the top of the list of the hiring manager. So if you find preparing for a job interview a nerve-wracking exercise, make sure you stay until the end of this video. Hi. During my professional life, I've had the experience of interviewing hundreds of people for different positions. Whether it was for large corporations or my smallest startups, I found that the people that I ended up choosing, they all fulfill what I'm going to tell you now. So without much further ado, let's start with my 10 tips on how to prepare for a job interview. Tip number 1, research the company. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, every time I prepare for a job interview, I'll make sure that I go to their website and check their website. But don't restrict yourself to that. Go to Google News. See if there have been any press releases that have been released about the company, any news, any new projects that they're working on. Check the competition. When you check the competition, maybe you will get some fresh ideas that you can bring on during the interview. Also, make sure that you check the culture of the company, see how the company works, see how you would fit in that culture. And a good tip to do this is go to websites like Glassdoor where employees can review the company. Tip number 2, do a research about the person you're going to be interviewing with. By the time you have a face-to-face interview with somebody in the company, they've already looked at your CV, they already know your background, and they know that you're a qualified person for that position. So you already have that. What they want to look at and what they want to know is whether they can work with you or not, whether you will fit in the culture of the company or not. So doing a bit of research about the person you're going to be talking to is very helpful. But be always professional, always be mindful about it. Use tools like LinkedIn, but make sure you don't look like a stalker. So connecting with somebody before an interview can be frowned upon. Don't do it. Also, every time that somebody has brought into an interview that they've done a research about me, I find it a bit intimidating. Make sure you're a little bit subtle about it. It's good to know what the person has done, their achievements, and you can mention that. But don't say, oh, I've done a research about you. Tip number 3, review the 150 most common interview questions. Yes, 150. There's a lot of resources online about this, so just go and Google it. Make sure you're prepared for behavioral questions such as, tell me about that time you found yourself in a conflicted situation and how you managed to resolve it. And also ensure that you are prepared for that pivotal questions about, tell me about yourself. There's nothing worse than somebody that is not able to talk about themselves in a convincing and engaging way. Remember, I'm looking at whether I can work with you, whether I'm going to be having fun and enjoying working with you. So if you're already boring in a job interview, you're not going to be at the top of my list. Tip number 4, make sure you're nice to everyone in the company. Your interview doesn't start when you step into the hiring manager's office. It starts when you enter the building. So make sure you're nice to everyone in the company, especially to the receptionist, because I'm sure the hiring manager will be asking them for their opinion about you. Tip number 5. There's a few tips grouped into this tip. First one, make sure you listen. You listen to the person that is asking the question. There's nothing wrong with having a silence after it to think and summarize everything that you need to say in your head. So this is the next tip. Be short and concise. Don't rumble. When you rumble, you sound insecure. You sound like you don't really know what you're talking about. And whenever the person interacts with you, don't interrupt them. Wait, listen. Make sure you listen carefully to what they're saying. Tip number 6, make sure you use your body language accordingly. What does that mean? That means that from the moment that you step into the room, you should look confident. You should look like you are the right person for the job. Remember what I said before. Apart from your experience, they're here to judge whether they can work with you, whether you fit in the company's culture. So your body language is one of the strongest and most powerful tools that you can use for that. If the company's culture is relaxed, make sure you act accordingly. But if the company's culture is formal, make sure you keep that formality on, but always with a smile on. Keep eye contact with the person that is interviewing you. If you don't keep eye contact, that says a lot about your self-confidence. Also, remember that you're here to establish a relationship of trust. So more than thinking about what you want to deliver, make sure you concentrate on creating that relationship, that kind of friendship with the interviewer. Tip number 7, make sure you bring everything you need for the job interview. And what does that mean again? Well, the answer is very subjective in this case. In my case, I like to bring a folder like this that is leather, nondescript, quite formal. It has a notepad inside in case I want to write notes, a pen of course, and a couple of copies of my CV. Sometimes the person that is interviewing you either hasn't received your CV or has left it in their desk. And it's always useful to have a copy of your CV in front of you. It helps with the narrative, and also you can share with the person that is interviewing you. Tip number 8. Bring a list of questions about the role to the job interview. Bringing a list of questions will demonstrate that you've done your due diligence and that you can prepare. So, asking questions such as, how will the performance of this role be measured? Who will be this role reporting to? What are the dynamics of the team? Asking those questions will demonstrate your interest in the position. But also make sure that you don't ask questions that have been answered during the interview, because then you will demonstrate that you were not using that active listening that I was mentioning before. Tip number 9, perhaps the most important tip of the ones that I'm going to give you today. Be confident. I already spoke a little bit about it when I was talking about body language, but this time I'm talking about everything about you during the interview. Your body language, the way you communicate, what you say, and the way you look at the person that is interviewing you. If you don't look confident, that kind of tells me that there's something wrong there. So many times I've been in front of candidates that they seem to have the perfect CV for the role. They have the perfect experience to perform the tasks that this role needs, but they don't look that they're confident. And what does that tell me? That maybe they're not the right person for the role. And it works the other way around as well. Sometimes I've hired people that they don't really have the experience that I need, but they've said, I'm the right person, I'm a quick learner, and I really want to learn about this, I really want to work for you. And they've managed to convince me because of that confidence. So you can work on your benefit. Make sure you rehearse before the interview on your body language and the way you come across, because you should come across confident. Not cocky, but confident. Tip number 10, the after interview. What do you do? If you have the email of the person that interviewed you, send them an email. Tell them how much you enjoyed that experience, how much you enjoyed meeting them, but also, so many times we forget to say things that are relevant for the role during the interview. This is your opportunity to mention them. Without extending too much, you can always say, oh, during the interview, I forgot to mention this that I think is relevant for the role. I hope you take it into consideration. Thank you very much for the experience, kind regards, and your signature.
So let's summarize what we've learned today on our 10 tips on how to prepare for a job interview. Tip number 1, research the company. Find out as much as you can about the company you're going to be interviewing for. Tip number 2, research the person that is going to interview you. Remember that you need to build rapport with this person, so the more you know about them, the easier it will be to do so. Tip number 3, review the most common interview questions. There's a lot of resources online, but I will be posting some in the description of this video. Tip number 4, be friendly to anyone in the company. You don't know who can have an influence in the outcome. Tip number 5, be concise and don't ramble. When you ramble, you sound insecure. Tip number 6, be mindful of your body language. Sometimes your body says more than your mouth. Tip number 7, bring something to write down notes on and a few copies of your CV. Tip number 8, prepare a list of questions to ask during the interview. Tip number 9, be confident and honest about yourself. Remember that if you're there, they probably already think that you're perfectly capable of doing the job. And finally, tip number 10, send a thank you email after the interview. It'll show your proactiveness.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. I will be posting more videos regularly, so make sure you subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed it. Also, if you have any comments, critics, or any question that you would like to ask me, make sure you post it in the comments below.